just before we hit the branch. Absolutely No Hope says, I've lived in the same place all my life, so I'm as in the dark as you. Very few people have visited a whole lot of cities around the world. I can tell you about the cities I have been to though. I mean, Venice, old Venice is really nice, but it's also not very practical these days. Old Venice, I mean like the parts with the canals, and there's like the streets are so narrow that there's no cars there. So it's not it's not a practical city, but it's really nice. A lot of cities have scale problems. Q says Vancouver is really nice to walk around. Ski mountains to the north, sea and beaches all over. Mountains and beaches. That does sound nice. That, and there. Yeah, no, it's hard to say because, yeah, no, even within a city, there are different parts of a city, and some parts are better than others. I'm just thinking of the cities I've been to. But if you're like talking about like to walk around, the thing is a lot of old cities, historic cities, they were designed to be walked around. Whereas modern cities are designed a lot of the times to be driven around. Right, you drive around a lot of modern cities. And so it's kind of, it's not really a contest because like the cities themselves have been designed for different purposes. So like it's not really a fair contest. For example, a lot of American cities are designed to be driven around. Like you're not even supposed to walk to the shop, you're supposed to drive to the shop. And I've heard people say things like they would drive across the road to buy stuff and then drive back. It's like they live opposite a shop, but they would drive across the road to go shopping and then drive back. Like it's kind of a joke, but it's kind of not, because when you design a city for driving, it can be very hostile to pedestrians. So it's kind of a joke, but also kind of not. I think I'd do that there. Probably do that. Oh, that's one block too high. I don't know. I know that's right. No, that's right. Okay, this is correct. Absolutely No Hope says every year there are more cars around here and I hate them more. It's a shame car industries pay government to stop the threat of good public transport. Where do you live? Absurdity. Actually, if you don't mind telling the whole internet where you live, maybe like a vague geographic area, if you don't want to give away any personal information. But yes, in some parts of the world, mostly I'm thinking of the United States. The car companies have had sufficient influence in the government that they would like design cities to favor cars and also to discourage public transport in order to sell more cars, which is a little bit much in my opinion, a little bit too much. Right, so we continue this. I suppose we fill in underneath. I think no, we don't fill in underneath because we don't need to. So we fill into there, and then we close that off. Until we get to there. Absurdity says I live near Sydney. Okay. Well, Australia is... I have been to Melbourne. Although Melbourne is not great for walking. It does have a decent tram system, Melbourne. But Australia is quite low density overall. Even the big cities are relatively low density. And low density means you can afford to have big wide roads, and big wide roads means you can afford to have a lot of cars, which again doesn't make it all that good for pedestrians. Did I not decide that that's unnecessary? I did. And then we go through to there. And we go that, I believe, is what I do. That underneath there. That's a bit strange. Alright, so that, and then to this side. So I live in Auckland, and Auckland mostly in the past is, I mean, New Zealand is pretty low density too. So in that way, quite similar, New Zealand and Australia, in terms of like city planning. Although we have been trying to get our public transport into a somewhat more decent state recently. So we are like building more and more train stations and extending tracks. At the moment they're tunneling underneath the center of the city to like add a branch to the train network. So we're trying to like shift away from our reliance on cars a little bit. But because the city has historically been built with highways and cars in mind, that particular project is expensive and time consuming and pretty difficult because you have to build around the existing car-based infrastructure. But hopefully, eventually, that will be completed and the city will be better off for it. And speaking of public transit, I've also spent some time in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is famous for having great public transit. Partly because the population is so dense. Like Hong Kong has mountains and very little land to build your city on. I mean, there's mountains, but it's very hard to build a skyscraper on a mountain. So there's a whole bunch of skyscrapers squeezed in between the mountains and the ocean on a little bit of reclaimed land. And because the population is so dense, the public transit is great because like it's short and small and you can get to a lot of places very quickly. Or rather, the places are squeezed in together so you can get to them quickly. But it's so crowded that it's not really nice to walk around. It's convenient, it's close, it's fast, but it's also kind of noisy and polluted because it's so crowded. So not exactly a nice place to walk around. I believe I stop this here. Alright, let's end that there, like that. Absurdity says, yeah, there was a state election here and no one in the major parties was forward-minded enough to suggest anything other than more roads. Fast rail is a running joke here because every politician promised it and it never happens. I mean, yeah, but it's also not surprising because look, it's not easy. I don't want to make excuses for politicians who break promises. But to like put in a train system into an existing city is a complicated project. Like if you work around all the existing buildings and all the existing roads, and it's not easy, but you kind of eventually have to do it because as your city grows and grows and grows, like you can't just have more and more roads because eventually there's a limit to how much your roads can serve you, and then you need to go to higher capacity public transit. But that is a difficult thing to do for any city. I mean, I'm talking about Hong Kong. They built the subway system a few decades ago. Actually, like a long time ago now. But like you go back and look at the photos of what they did. Like back then, they were already like multi-story buildings in Hong Kong, and they would like dig underneath the road. Like they have like tall buildings on either side. And then in the middle, there's the road. They would like dig up the whole road to put the train tracks underneath the road and then repave the road over the train tracks. Like it's an enormous engineering project. And you like disrupt traffic for years and years. Basically digging up trenches where your roads used to be and then laying the subway underneath. It's an insane engineering project, not to mention the logistics and the money it costs. But then once you do that, it's great. Like once you finish that difficult task, it's great to ride around your subways and not have to deal with cars anymore. So yeah, like it's on the one hand, politicians breaking promises. On the other hand, it is actually quite a difficult challenge to do that. Alright, so I decided packed ice underneath. Let me go ahead and put that there. Absurdity says they'd rather just demolish and rebuild sports stadiums at exorbitant cost for seemingly no reason. Well, I guess it gives money to construction companies or something. Q says, yeah, here we had a new rail line go in, but no one used it. Wait a minute, nobody used it? What was the problem with that one, Q? Because I'm interested to like hear why things fail as well. Did they put it somewhere that was easy to install, but it didn't actually do anything useful? Because all the useful stuff is the difficult stuff. At the moment, where I am in New Zealand, they're talking about, in Auckland, they're talking about putting in a tram line to the airport, which is relatively easy because there's nothing out at the airport except for the airport, and so you don't really disrupt traffic all that much. And it's kind of useful because people do use the airport from time to time, but it's one of these things where not that many people go to the airport every single day. So it might turn out to be one of these things, Q, where like you put it in and then nobody really uses it because that's not really what people need. The stuff that people need, like I mentioned, like a new tram line linking up all the, like linking up the city center with the other regional centers. I mean, that'll be really useful, but it would be so disruptive and so expensive to everyone, everywhere, because like it's the most heavily used part of the system, and you're just changing that. I believe it's just gonna do that. It looks a little strange, but it's actually correct. And I think we don't worry about the other bit. Okay, so there. Probably also down there, so it looks like it's sitting on something. There. I also need to put in trapdoors to access underneath here. Don't really need to change all of those. Oops. Maybe I should do something like that. Oh, there's water behind here. I should be careful with this. Alright, let's see if I can do this without flooding the whole thing. Actually not confident. Oh. Alright, got it. Nice. That's good. And that's good, and I believe all of that's correct. Let me just double check. Alright, all that is good so far. And then all of this is just underneath, right? Well, maybe a bit on top here. Let me go underneath to do this. So those blocks. And those blocks.